You're good, Dave.
We could be the ones that have something to say. Tired of what's left in the world to make. Taking back our lives is the only way. 'Cause I love you if you love me stupidity. Trading it all for another way. Tonight, unite, it's a love renegade. 'Cause I'm letting it all down. Without much erase to shine. Tell the world we're bound. Let love bring down. 'Cause I'm letting it all down. Without much erase to shine. Tell the world we're bound. Let love bring down. Yeah. This whole thing just gets so much bigger in this place. Laying down our weapons, we're leading a race. All together with one voice, fill up this space. Small have to get this moment, lunacy. Y'all can have it, we don't want it anyway. Tonight, unite, with the love renegade. It's time to let it all out. Without much erase to shine. Tell the world we're bound. Let love bring down. It's time to let it all out. Without much erase to shine. Tell the world we're bound. Let love bring down. Yeah. Tell the world we're bound. Let love bring down. It's how we lay it all down. Without much erase now. Tell the world we're bound. Let love bring down. These days I feel like I've been locked in a cell. Everybody thinks that they know me so well. You ever had the feeling there's nowhere to hide? When perception's a reality, everyone dies. And singing like a note, not today. We hold the keys and all of us are breaking out. Oh, oh, gonna be alright. Oh, oh, gonna let it loose tonight. Oh, oh, just wanna dance. Oh, oh, let's give it a chance. It's all an illusion, never breaking these walls. Fear owns us captive with no force at all. Bars are now breaking, let's leave this behind. The door is wide open, come join me outside. You're singing like days today, we hold the keys, and all of us are breaking out. Oh, oh, we're gonna be alright. Oh, oh, gonna let loose tonight. Oh, oh, let's just wanna dance. Oh, oh, let's give it a chance. You and me, we're running wild and free, hey, living out our destiny. You and me, we're running wild and free, hey. Looking back now, everybody's alright. Oh, oh, gonna let loose tonight. Oh, oh, just wanna dance. Oh, oh, let's give it a chance. Oh, oh, gonna be alright. Oh, oh, gonna let loose tonight. Oh, oh, don't you just wanna dance? Oh, oh, let's give it a chance. Thank you. My name is Dave Mead, and it truly is an honor to be here. When I got invited to this, it's just very exciting to me to just be a part of an event like this. This is not common, and so I'm thrilled for this night. I'm just going to share a few songs with you that I've written over the last few years, and this next one is my wife and I have spent a lot of time with at-risk teens in our area over the last 12 years of our life. And they inspired this song. They've got lots of questions, trying to figure out what the answers to those are. And the observation my wife and I have made over the years is that every one of these kids' questions are attached to an adult in their life. And in so many cases, they grow up to become the very same questions to their children that their parents were to them. And this song just poses the question, can we change that and actually become an answer to our kids? So enjoy. A little boy can't get to sleep. His world came crashing down again tonight. So many questions. Is something wrong with me? Am I the reason you had to go away? He sits inside the darkness, longing to be loved. I wanna be the answer, not the question. Find out what I'm made for. Give him all the love that he deserves. Like the sun breaks through the night sky, I'm breathing up now for a better life. That boy becomes a man that is the answer. Girl, lost inside her head. Her heart is broken and no one seems to care. They look the other way while the unthinkable is done. She asks, when will somebody fight for me? Are there answers to her questions? She's not sure she can go on. I wanna be the answer, not the question. Find out what I'm made for. Give her all the love that she deserves. Like the sun breaks through the night sky, breathing up now for a better life. the sun breaks through the night sky. Breathing hope now for a better life. You and I were made to be the answer. So this one I wrote a few years ago when life really sucked, frankly. And I feel like every songwriter says that. And it's just a raw look at some of those not so fun sides of life and realities of the world, good, evil, all that kind of stuff. And then the chorus is just my way of reminding myself to, I'm being very honest, like I can't do this anymore. But I've found a power that nothing can stop that keeps me going, all right? So enjoy the song, it's called Relax. What's wrong with the world, you say? I'm asking the same. Every day is like the force of power on earth and star. Inexorably stronger with every thought. Oppression or resolve, the mind's disease. The beast within I can't contain or ease. It seems there's no length we won't go. Feel the demand of an empty soul. I've got voices in my head that are out of control, telling me to do what I already know. It's like monsters screaming day and night. I can't shake it, break it, put up a fight. Envy, hate, murder, greed, the lust for more. I can't repeat, unquenched like fire, raging wild, burning till there's nothing left of me. Don't wanna do this anymore. Can't do this anymore. Wanna do this anymore. I won't do this anymore. I found a power to take a style. Don't have to do this anymore. Relentless to the core. I won't do this anymore. What's wrong with my life today? I've been damaged, scarred in so many ways. It's like the ones placed here on earth for me. They cut at my soul and watch me bleed, perpetuating all that they've ever seen. Maintaining the program like a machine. Is there a mastermind behind all this code? In a world that's lost, just doing what we know. Retribution's of protection, building up walls, protecting what's mine. Doesn't matter who falls. Is there anything good left in my soul? I'm losing my grip on what's left in me. Wanna do this anymore. Can't do this anymore. Wanna do this anymore. I won't do this anymore. Found a power to fix style. Don't have to do this anymore. Relentless to the core. I won't do this anymore. Voices, voices, I hear love in my soul. Choices, choices, I'm gonna let you take control. Give the world a better day, and be the change you want to see. Leave a legacy behind that only love defines. You won't do this anymore. Won't do this anymore. Won't do this anymore. I won't do this anymore. I found a power to take a style. Don't have to do this anymore. daughter just walked in, and so I guess I'll probably should sing the song I wrote for my kids a few years ago. It's just called "Belong," and it's just a dad. I've got lots of daughters. I have four girls and one son, and so it's a challenge sometimes for a dude, a guy, to convey to his daughters how much he loves them in a way that they actually understand it. Get this male-female dynamic, and you all with me on that? This song just is the heart of a dad. It just wants his kids to know how much he loves them. So. I'm lost today, don't know what to say. There's a shadow over me, and I can hardly breathe. Never felt like this before. An ache I can't explain. When the ones that I adore, their eyes are full of pain. You see, they're not so very different than the rest of all the world. Just looking to be loved, value more than pearls that cry. Notice me, and can't you see? I just need someone to care. Can't you see you're everything to me? There's no one I want more, a place I'd rather be. Rest assured when you cannot see, you belong to me. You belong to me. Why is my love so small? Doesn't feel like that at all. It's taking everything I am, doing all that I can. It feels the harder that I try. Still I look them in their eyes. Says I just gotta know, if you love me, never go. There's a trillion times here in my head, yet so much goes left unsaid. Can straight to finish well. To love them enough to tell they cry, notice me. Don't you see? I just need to know you're there. Can't you see you're everything to me? There's no one I want more, the place I'd rather be. Rest assured when you cannot see, you belong to me. You belong to me. And I'll give my life to show them that I'm never letting go. Gotta show me how to love, so let go. Can't you see you're everything to me? There's no one I want more, no place I'd rather be. Rest assured when you cannot see, you belong to me. You belong to me. If we fail 10,000 times before we finally get it right, I keep trying till there's no doubt in your mind. I keep trying till you know you're mine. Thank you. So I'm going to finish this time before we head into the conversation with a song that just released. Was able to release this just a couple weeks ago. It's called Just One Life. And if you, wherever you listen to music, Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, Apple Music, wherever, you can find Dave Mead and my music and a lot of the songs that I've already sung. And then this one just came out a couple weeks ago. So enjoy. are days in our lives that don't make sense at all. It seems there's nowhere to hide. Our backs against the wall, can't seem to find what we've lost. Our treasure buried deep. We've gone so far away from where we're supposed to be. Going on and all alone for far too long. Catching you, laying it down and letting go for a while. We're not giving up to the fight. We've been knocked down before. We're holding on with all our might. We won't let it go. We're not giving up to the fight. No matter what we find behind the door. We've only got just one life. What are we living for? So find what strength we have left and come together, my friends. This is the way it's always been meant to be. Going on and all alone for far too long. Cashing in, laying it down and letting go for a while. And we're not giving up the fight. We've been knocked down before. We're holding on with all our might. We won't let it go. And we're not giving up the fight. No matter what we find behind the door. We've only got just one life. What are we living for? No, it won't be long. I'm weak, you strong. Won't see the fight go on and on and on and on. Oh, I know it won't be long. I'm weak, you strong. Won't see the fight go on and we're singing about the soul. We're not giving up the fight. We've been knocked down before. Holding on with all our might. Won't let go. We're not giving up the fight. No matter what we find behind the door. We've only got just one life. And what are we living for? Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. We'll give the stage to Erin in just a moment, but first, thank you for coming. I am Laura. I'm the Executive Director here at Creative 360. I know that some of you are new to Creative 360 or you were at the first show, and so we're really happy to have you here tonight or back again if you were here at the first show. Before I hand the mic over to Bree, who is on our board and wants to talk to you for a minute as well, I want to share a little bit about the partnership that we have with the Breaking Bread Village and how you can support it. We are really excited to host this second episode of Breaking Bread Village Live. The first one was back in September. It's kind of unbelievable that an entire month has gone by since then. It just flew. We have a similar mission. And when Erin and I sat down to talk about doing this, we just knew right away it made perfect sense for Creative 360 to be the place where Breaking Bread Village went live. When we got together to discuss the details, we knew we were going to make this a no-cost event because we wanted everyone in the community to be able to come. We didn't want the price of the event to keep anyone from coming through those doors. But I'm sure that you understand that just because you didn't pay to get in doesn't mean it didn't cost us to host this event. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. We have a staff of 2 full-time people and 2 part-time people, and that's it. Our mission is to create environments where everyone, no matter their age, their ability or disability, their means, can experience the beauty of what it means to create. We have classes and events and performances and shows and workshops and events like this one because we know that conversation is a way that people create as well. Our events are always low cost or free, and we therefore count on donations and grant revenues to be able to do the good that we do in the community. But the same is true for Erin. She counts on your help to be able to do all the good she does for the community as well. If you can, please consider supporting us and supporting Erin so that we can continue to bring programs like this to our community and events like this. I'm gonna hand this over to Bree, and I appreciate your time with us. She's gonna tell you a little bit about some special issues that we're facing at Creative 360. So. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Bree Sklar, and I am so thrilled to be here with all of you tonight. As Laura mentioned, I am part of the board here at Creative 360. We just want to take a moment to remind you why your support is so important to us and how your contributions to Creative 360 goes to work for our community. Creative 360 is a tiny organization that works hard to make a gigantic impact. We believe that when we bring people together, we have the power to change the world. We also believe that nothing should get in the way of participating in the arts and wellness. So we offer low cost, or like this event, free opportunities for people of all ages, all abilities to express themselves through the creative process. But we cannot offer these opportunities without financial support from our community. This year, we have some special expenses. Our Alvin B. Dow building is almost 60 years old, and we have some major repairs to make on the roof, lighting, and HVAC systems. The good news is Creative 360 has already raised $55,000 in grant funding. Woohoo! Go Laura! But that requires a match donation, and that's where you all can come in. There are envelopes at the front desk that you can take home with you that have the complete 360-hour schedule, or you can easily donate on our website. No amount is too small, and we truly value each and every dollar you honor us, and we are grateful for your support of all that we do. Thank you and enjoy this wonderful collaboration with the Breaking Bread Village. And now I would like to introduce Danielle, who will introduce the panel.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. We can do better than that. This is part 2 of the Breaking Bread Village. Good evening. Yes, that's what we want that type of energy because that's what Erin is all about. This is something that's close to her heart. She is one of my dearest friends, and she is a free spirit indeed. And this is something that she has been dreaming and manifesting, and she has brought it to reality and full fruition. And we thank you that you all are a part of it. She is one person who just puts others before herself. She is always interacting with community, with children, with family. She is a well-rounded diva, and we love her to pieces. Yes, we do. And she is celebrating soon up and coming her birthday, so we are all partying up in here. So I want you to feel free, enjoy yourselves, interact, raise your hand, participate, ask questions, speak out, and bring a new element and a new level to part 2 of the Breaking Bread Village. So I want to go ahead and call up the people on the panel before we welcome in Erin. So I have Michael, if you could come up, please. And you can give a hand. And then we have Britt. Erin. Rodney. Sarah. Patrick. Jimmy. And last but not least, Nadine. So we want to thank everybody, and we are excited and ready to get this thing started. So I want you guys to stand for me, give a round of applause for Erin Latrice, please stand. Welcome her in. Let's say Erin. Breaking Brook Village. Yeah.
One conversation at a time.
The Breaking Bread Village.
One conversation at a time.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Breaking Bread Village. I'm so excited to see you all. Is my mic here going? So you guys can hear me? Can you all hear me really well? Did that make any difference?
I can hear you. I don't think that counts.
Well, I just want to say again, thank you guys for being here today. We've had so many changes in the last week, some of our panelists. So I'm just so happy that everything works out the way it's supposed to be. And everybody is here that is supposed to be here. So we are going to go ahead and get started. I want to thank the panelists again for you guys being here. So I appreciate it so much. And I thank you guys. So we are going to get started with some of our conversation. So last time we had part one, we weren't able to cover all of our topics. So today we are going to finish those topics up. And also I want you all to know that you are able to ask questions or make comments if you like throughout the conversation. We really welcome that to get a full village response to some of our conversations here. So we're going to start off with our thoughts. We're going to just get right into it with sexual orientation. That was one of our topics last time that we weren't able to get to, and that is a hot topic because, you know, a lot of awareness is trying to come in regards to what people consider, you know, identify as or what they feel who they are. So let's talk about it. Sexual orientation, do we think that, do we believe that it is something that people are born with? Do we believe that it's something that they get into it, or is it something that you feel like, you know, how do I want to say this? How do I want to say it? Erin, you feel like, I know you feel very strongly about this, so if you want to get started, you can.
Okay, well, can you guys hear me? All right, cool. I guess I want to start off by saying, to me, it really doesn't matter whether you believe you're born that way or you become that way over time. The biggest thing for me is how other people make people feel. There have been numerous, I did research paper on this a couple years back, but how more likely you are to be depressed, how more likely you are not to go to hospitals, how more likely you are not to feel comfortable around doctors, lawyers, judges, when you are identified as gay or lesbian. And along with that, it's a term called intersectionality, and that was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, I believe. And that is basically the more obstacles you have in your way, the more likely you are to be hurt by them. So say you're a woman, and now you're more likely to face obstacles if you're a black woman, and you're more likely to face obstacles if you're a black woman that lives in Detroit, Michigan. And then if you're trans, it's a whole different thing. And it really does not matter about your religion and how you feel about gay people and lesbians, but you should respect their wishes regardless.
Okay. Jimmy, you have something to add to that?
She told me we were here to talk about the Atlanta Braves and the Houston Astros. She caught me off guard. No, ironically enough, I concur. You know, I don't think anybody would choose to be different. Quite frankly, I think that might be an easy excuse for a lot of people to use, but I don't think people just wake up one morning, especially as an adult, and decide to be different. Just even being different cosmetically or optically is tough enough to get through. But the idea that you would put yourself or pigeonhole yourself into something that toxic or as a conversation or controversial issue, I don't believe that. I think I love the miracle of birth. I do. And unfortunately, birth is not a perfect ordeal. And for many people who are born with deformities, or people who are born with any kind of handicap or disease for that matter, Down syndrome. So this mystery of birth and what happens during that whole process, the idea that any of us would be so arrogant enough to believe that something sexually doesn't happen in that process as well, I don't ever want to be that arrogant. So it's easier for me to just marvel at the mystery of birth and then accept what comes as a result of it. So I don't have those kind of hang-ups. I sit on the Great Lakes Big Pride organization. I'm the treasurer for that. So I'm a little bit of a unicorn, being Black, Republican, and like I'm not supposed to fit. But I think people like me, when you embrace the differences, as a person who came into this country and was treated horribly because I was so different, gives you a different set of lens. So when people are different, you either tend to criminalize that or you tend to be more empathetic.
Yeah.
So me, I'm a lot more empathetic, and by sitting with transsexual people, gay, lesbian, you understand that these are people who just try to get through life just like the rest of us. And being different and treated different is something that they have to endure on a daily basis. So that's my opinion.
So I actually kind of wanted to piggyback off of both of what you guys were saying, because you're talking about whether or not it's, something that happens at birth, something that you grow into. I personally am pansexual. For those who don't know, it's more than any gender, all genders. So male, female, anybody in between, beyond, it's whatever, it's cool with me. I would also be considered transgender because I'm non-binary. So even though I'm femme presenting, I use the term genderqueer. I speak about my life so much as a woman because so much of my experiences are based off of that. But I've, even at a young age, I knew that when, hey girl, I was like, that's gross. I don't like ma'am, which I don't think anybody likes being called ma'am. But so as far as pronouns, I use any pronouns, especially if it's another assigned female at birth who uses she, her with me, because when they use those terms, I know they're not using it derogatorily or with a sense of other when they say it. But it's always Mr. Sarah. It's never Mr. or Miss Sarah. It's always Mr.
So has that always been something that you kind of?
So that's how I've always felt.
Sure.
And then it was a TikTok, and somebody says you don't owe anybody androgyny to be non-binary, and I was like, that's it? That's all I needed? Was somebody to just give me permission to be myself? So that's the trans side of it. But as far as the sexuality, which was the original point, I didn't have enough space to find out if that's who I was when I was younger. Because I was born in the 80s, grew up in the 90s. You were either straight or you were a lesbian, and neither of those felt right to me. But I was like, but I can't be a lesbian.
So you didn't have the language. To really identify.
Yep.
Okay.
Because bisexuality, which pansexual is under the umbrella of bisexuality, which is being attracted to two or more genders. As a bisexual, a pansexual person, in the era that I grew up, you were either straight or gay, and you couldn't even explore that without being immediately shoved into that side of the gym. This is your side now. You have to be a lesbian. That's why I have a problem with the word orientation, because it's I didn't choose it.
That's a discussion, because there are a lot of people that believe that, right? There's people that believe that. So I think that's where the discussion comes in, is that some people believe that. I know there was a young lady that I talked to years ago that she always dated males, and she had a lot of bad experiences while dating them. And then she said that her exact words were, I wanted to decide to be a lesbian and date women, right? So people sometimes within the community do give different.
And there is a choice, because I have friends who've been either so mistreated or abused or harmed deeply by men that they will only be a lesbian by choice. I joke because I'm single or whatever, dating men isn't a choice. It's not something I would choose to do just based on some of the experiences I've had. So I understand what people really choose to, but I don't think that that's where it roots from, because that's the other thing that I grew up, is that if you were a lesbian, you hated men. And you were angry feminists who hated men. And it's I understand why women get that angry.
Oh, well, of course, I'm sure a lot of women out there just understand why we
Like,
get upset.
you know,
Yeah,
but
for sure.
there's still more to it than that, and so I think now that the conversation, you know, memes, I think has made it so much easier to just talk about, because you can make a joke about it, but jokes create language,
Right.
and then you have, you know, this instantaneous, like, I could post my gender today is moss growing out of stone, like, that's my gender, and somebody else would be like, yeah, that's how I'm feeling today too, that's my gender, like, you know, it's just a great way to like open up and have conversations about.
Yeah.
But having like TikTok, hearing somebody say that on TikTok, I'm never gonna see that person in real life, but they changed mine because I finally had permission to be comfortable being me.
Right.
So.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything to add to this discussion?
This is an interesting conversation for me. One of the things that always gets me is, so we're in the middle of this COVID thing,
Sure.
and everybody's telling us, follow the science, follow the science. Well,
Yeah.
scientifically, you're born male or female. And so using the word gender just seems odd, because really, there's only two genders scientifically.
Sure.
But I get the rest. I mean, you can feel however you want, you can love whoever you want, I got a problem with it. I'm just trying to figure out, I've never been able to totally wrap my head around the gender, I think I saw something that said there's like 52 genders or something. Where those come from? When I was in school, there was two, I don't know what the rest of them are, so.
Yeah.
That's the only part of the conversation that I think is a little off for me anyways, but other than that, none of it.
Well, but I want to say I appreciate you for sharing that, because I think that we have to be honest in what we feel, right? And like questions that we have. So I appreciate you for sharing that, because people do have questions, especially I know for myself. I was raised traditionally Baptist, right? And we were taught, of course, that anybody other than, heterosexual people were going to hell. That was like beat into you that you were going to burn up in flames of fire if you ventured outside of that. So I think that especially if you were raised in a certain type of era, or underneath a certain mindset, people do have questions, and I think that we have to give each other a little grace in answering those questions. Does anybody else have?
Yeah, I don't want to come across negatively, but there's a couple of things that what we're discussing how homosexuality is perceived or our individual experiences, because there's a lot of things out there. There's what's in the public domain and what's in the private domain, and they're two things. I really believe in live and let live.
Sure.
And everybody needs love and everybody has rights. But what we sometimes forget, and being a Muslim guy, and not a lot of many Muslims around here, people don't understand people. That's the first thing. So that causes barriers. Regardless whether you're black, Muslim, Jewish, a different Christian denomination, or LGBTQ, people don't understand it. One of the things that even for me is difficult, and I respect people's rights who are coming from a different orientation, but are we arguing about labels? Because that's another thing that's quite, I talk to my younger kids and I say the wrong thing. Oh, you can't say that, they're not lesbian or gay, they are, for example, pansexual. So we're hung up about labels, to me. And I think what we need to do, because we've got different cultures that are created from different times, from different eras. And it's hard for other people to digest. So we've got to make our communication for other people to accept, to make it easy for them and not put all these barriers up. I don't know if I've made myself clear.
Oh, so thank you.
I do think what you say has some merit, but I would kind of disagree that it has to do with labels. I think that's a superficial way that people want to make people perceive them talking as. Like, gay marriage wasn't even legal federally until, 2015? I think there's a lot of underlying hate, and people just use things like labels to say, I don't understand this, and they just keep moving the bar. And even if we got to understand, this is what you want to be labeled as, people are still going to have that underlying hate, and they're still going to project that towards people. That's just my thoughts about it.
But that seems to be unfair though in many respects, because it is, and I think you brought it up, it's generational. You can't take somebody who's 50, 60 years old, who grew up in an environment, and and then all of a sudden, bam, here's the rest of the world. You know, give people a chance to breathe and take that in without labeling them. So you start talking about labels. The fact that I don't understand something, I do, but if I was somebody who didn't understand, it doesn't make me anti-something. It doesn't make me homophobic. It doesn't make me anything other than somebody who's confused. Why can't that be a label? Why can't I just don't get it be a label until you softly guide me into a place where now I seek to understand? And that's the problem with today's environment. You are labeled now as your worst moment in life. You know, you take the Gruden thing, for example. You know, I mean, what macho guy 20 years ago didn't talk like that? So we stop allowing people to evolve. No, nobody gets to grow anymore. If you said a bad word 20 years ago, that's who you are. Even though that generationally seemed to be acceptable. And I'm not excusing people's behavior. I'm simply saying, let people evolve, let people grow. Give people guidance to feel comfortable coming into a new world for them. And it is for
It
many
is a new world, and Michael, it looked like you had something to say. I just want to add something real quick to what was said. That is very true. I was talking to a young lady one time that she's pretty young, and she grew up in a generation that was very accepting of different things, right? And I was trying to explain to her that, you know, there's some new things for different generations, right? Trying to learn, especially sometimes within the communities, it's ever growing. Like different genders or pronouns are being added, right? So this is an ever-growing thing. This is not just something that, you know, you can just take this one thing and learn it, right? But I was telling her, I said, you know, one thing I would encourage you to do is show a little grace, right? Because it is something new. And I'm not saying hate speech or like trying to beat somebody up because of it, or, you know, just really like degrading them in a certain way. But if it's something where you say the wrong thing, I know, and I'm not even hateful like that. I've gotten jumped on for saying the wrong thing because I just didn't know, right? So, and I've talked to Sarah before and asked questions because I don't know. So I tried to encourage her to show a little grace, because the same way you want to be accepted, you have to also accept. Like it has to be a two-way thing, right? And I'm not saying to be hateful, but when someone just doesn't know and they're ignorant, give them a little grace. Now, if they continue to do it, that's a different thing, right? Then you can address that how you want to, but in those first learning stages, give a little grace, and that's all I'll add to it. But Michael, you wanted to say?
I was just going to say, I thought that he had a really good point about it being about understanding. And I think the real distinction is when you have somebody who doesn't understand, the two different ways someone can react. So you can say, oh, I don't understand this, so I reject it. Or I don't understand this, I need to learn more. And I found myself doing that when, is it Sarah?
Yeah.
When you were talking about, you used some terms that I'm not familiar with. So in my head, I was just trying to wrap my head around, just trying to understand. I thought it was fascinating. Even though it's something I don't understand, it's not anything I just rejected. I want to learn more.
Yeah.
And I think that's the real distinction
Yeah.
between I shouldn't say two sets of people, but you're seeing these polarized sides where they have something they don't understand, they either immediately reject it, or they are just open to the fact that they don't understand, they want to learn more.
Oh, I just wanted to react as somebody from the other side of those conversations, because I've had people like, thank you for not being angry at me for asking questions.
That's probably me.
Right? No, you're not the only one. Like, there's so many people, and I'm generally, like, I lean towards education. Like, if I'm doing something, like, I've done makeup on Pat, like, I'm explaining to you everything I'm doing, because maybe you want to do that for yourself later. I don't know. I lean towards educational moments. I like teachable moments. Being on that side of that, though, labels, you were talking about labels and stuff. I believe that for me personally, labels are for me to use for myself to explore, and then use to try and communicate my experiences to other people to be understood. When I have those conversations, people are, really good about like, hey, if I mess up, whatever, like, cool. But there are people who are so defensive of this identity that they find, like, I finally get to feel like me, and people aren't respecting it because they're still like fighting to feel solid in their own identity.
Sure.
Gender, sexuality is a constant thing. It's fluid for a lot of us because we're still figuring it out, because we didn't get to do that as kids.
And that's a good point. If you're still figuring it out,
like, right, exactly. No, and that's why I try to go about it with grace, because like, I don't know, I'll be 36. Like, I'm still learning, I'm still figuring it out. But I think that comes with emotional maturity and emotional wisdom of being like, not every question, not every thing is an intentional effacement, like it's not an attack. Give it a moment, you will know the ones who don't care. Because I've had those conversations. I had one guy tell me that he knew more about being non-binary than me because my daughter is non-binary. And I was like, just straight up misgendered your kid. While telling me that you know more about it.
See, that would be me. I would do that because I'm still learning, right? So I would, because I've had like, some of my son's friends that I knew as children as one, like a female, say for instance, and then, now they identify as male.
Yeah.
So me being, I'll go up and say, hey, and I would say she, not trying to be, offensive, but because I've known her for like, I just did it right now, because I knew her for a long time. And, but I'm just making a point that it is something to learn. And again, I really do think it's generational sometimes. And again, I'm not trying to make excuses at all. I'm just saying that it's a new language.
Yeah, and I misgender myself all the time, like it happens.
Yeah,
So just for those who are asking questions and feel like you're being attacked because you asked a question, some of us feel attacked being questioned because we're so fragile in our identity.
I appreciate you for sharing that, because I think that gives a lot of perspective sometimes in that. Did anybody else have, that's been quiet on this end?
Yeah, no, you stole my Grace comment, and I think that I was gonna steal that from you from our phone call.
Okay.
So, you can take it back.
Okay.
Sarah has been one of the people that I talked to about this, and I grew up in the same era, 80s, 90s, where the F word was still used towards to demean homosexuals, and that was a constant thing, and it was funny, and then, I'm sure I said it at somebody that was, and it hurt. I'm sure that happened. And this kind of goes towards Jimmy's point, is I hope that I wouldn't be defined by that, because I am still learning. And my first roommate when I went to college came out to me as gay the third weekend, and I didn't care, and I was very proud of myself. And I learned a lot from him about that whole world that I had never, ever, ever dipped a toe into because I'm a straight white man.
Right.
And so there's a lot of, and it kind of goes to the label point too. It's easy to explain things by using labels. And so I want, with Michael's point, I want to learn so that I can understand so that I don't offend anybody. I don't want everyone to be on the same level playing field. But recently there's been a lot of, and this is good, a lot of people talking about their experiences and their feelings and their beliefs and how they are inside, how they've been for a long time. And it's giving rise to new words and new terms that you may not be familiar with. I'm certainly not familiar with all of them, although I'm very proud of myself. Earlier, someone started talking about gender identity, which is different than sexual orientation. I was very proud that I put this up on that. So thank you, Sarah. But yeah, so it is in time of, I don't know what I said, maybe the transitional generation, where that's a little bit more common. But it is a constant learning thing,
and we have to be intentional with learning, right?
You do.
You have
just
to be
with
intentional.
everything. You don't
Exactly.
I went to school to be a lawyer. That was intentional. I want to not be a bad person. I want to be nice to people. So I want to.
You wanted to be a lawyer?
I did.
No, I'm kidding.
At a young age, I said, Dad, I want work clothes. They got me helmets and like a hammer and stuff. I said, no, I want a suit. So that worked out. But anyway, it does need to be intentional, but it also is and this is coming from a place of privilege. It's very new to us too, and I don't have to change myself. You are all changing yourselves, and we're trying to catch up. And so the grace both ways, I think, goes a long way towards making harmony happen. But I do understand Sarah's point about the immediate anger because they haven't had the identity. They haven't had the ability to have something to call themselves.
Yeah. Rodney, did you have something to add? And now, and if the audience has a question, okay.
She had her hand.
Okay, Rodney, go ahead and go, and then we'll have you go next.
Yeah, I'm kind of, I don't believe I'm old school, but yet at the same time, I'm very strong in my Christian belief.
Yeah.
And homosexuality, I know there's a lot of confusion out there, but homosexuality is considered a sin, as well as being overeating, as well as a whole lot of other.
Oh, well, that's all right. I'm on my way then.
So, but I'm with the ideas that God created us as male and female. And that's the principle that I go on. And that I believe that anything that's contrary to being male or female is somewhat of an aberrant view of way of looking at things. And I know that people are highly creative that are in the LGBT LGBTQ. I know there's a lot of things that they're desiring to move forward in, and I believe it's causing some, my personal opinion, is causing some confusion among younger people at times concerning the whole issue. And it's multiplying in certain respects. And so I'm looking at this whole thing. I've done a lot of research on it, look at it, and I hold no animosity towards anybody that is gay or LGBTQ or whatever. But at the same time, as a Christian believer, I've got to say this is wrong. As much as other things that people do are wrong and it's not right, it's, to me, I hold that same perspective. I cannot compromise on what I feel, but it doesn't mean I can't love people who are different than I.
May I ask, my religion holds the same view, but who are we to judge? That's the other side of it.
The
We're
Bible-
going to leave that to God.
Yeah, the Bible, the word judgment there, from my perspective, is talking about condemning someone. God judges. He's the only one that judges. But we, at the same time, have to, the Bible's very clear that as Christians, we are to judge certain things, mainly the household of God. But at the same time, we are to make those judgments of right and wrong. What is moral, immoral, what is sin and not sin. We're to make those judgments. But I condemn, that's the condemnation aspect of me condemning somebody, that is wrong for me to do. That's strictly in God's hands.
Ronnie, well, first I want to say one reason why I had you come on here is because even though a lot of times you and I do not agree on things, we are able to be honest and transparent. So I do appreciate that for you sharing that, because it's not a popular opinion amongst people sometimes. So I appreciate you for sharing that. You know, what I always say, and Azalea, I'm going to have you go next. I just want to say this. What I always find interesting, because I grew up, you know, studying the Bible and learning about the Bible and having to recite Bible verses. And, you know, it's a long list of stuff that's wrong, right? That we don't pay attention to. So I always find it very interesting that topic is the one that we single out in regards to what we condemn, right? Because there's so many things that, like, eat pork. There's so many things we can go up and down the list of things that are said to be wrong, right? So, but I appreciate you for standing on your views. And I want Azalea to go next.
As a part of LGBTQ youth, I am bisexual and I use she/they pronouns. So I know that you guys grew up in a generation where that is not exactly accepted or normal, but it is for me. And I don't want to continue to live in a society where you guys get to dictate, oh yeah, I'm going to accept this part, but not this part because it's easier for me. Like you said, sir, sorry, I don't remember your name exactly, but you grew up in a generation where these things weren't normal. Not everybody was coming out, and you, Sarah, came out when you were way
I was
later.
34 when I came out as non-binary.
Exactly. You came out much younger. I came out when I was in the 5th grade. My mom knows that, and it was much easier for me because I live in a very accepting world now. But you guys didn't, and it's harder for you. I understand that. But the thing is, you guys have to try, because I can't keep living in a society where I can't be accepted because you guys won't try.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think everybody up here saying they were trying. You know, I don't think that was, well, maybe not Ronnie, but that's okay. Everybody else was saying that, you know.
The thing is, I'm not rejecting anyone. I believe God loves, and His love is complete. I had a person one time say to me, Mr. Mack, they call me Mr. Mack sometimes at school, and they said, God loves me just the way I am. And that person was bisexual, I believe. At least that's what she had told me numbers of times. She felt completely comfortable sharing that with me. And I said, yes, God does love you, and He loves you enough to not leave you the way you are, and me to leave me the way I am either. God loved me enough to make changes in my life and alter how I think and how I feel and so on. And He can do it to anybody else too. the Word of God says that it is a sin. There's things I've done in my life that's been wrong, and God's had to correct me. And that's the way I accept it from other people as well. That's between you and God, and it's up to God to make those changes, not me.
I'm not Christian specifically. I consider myself agnostic, but you did just say that homosexuality is a sin, and you said the things you've done are wrong. Why are you not considering them as sins?
I do.
Then why didn't you say that?
No, I think that's what he was saying.
That's what I'm saying.
I think that's
Because
what
I just want
I
you
was
to
putting
know
it in
that, like,
context of what I was saying.
okay, 'cause
Yeah.
those kinds of things, there's plenty of things in the Bible, small tattoos, all kinds of things that I consider completely absurd to an amount because they seem like such regular day things now, considering the Bible was written thousands of years ago. But I completely accept your religion. I don't have any problems with it. It's just that it's like for me, like certain religions, they don't care about homosexuality at all. Like Wicca, a lot of people don't know what that is, but they don't care. And that's what I consider myself some part of. They don't care about homosexuality, and my religion doesn't affect my sexuality, and yours does. That's your thing, but it doesn't matter to me, and it doesn't change me.
Right, and I think for him, he feels the same way. So that's the part of this that gets so interesting is that everybody's on these different sides of this and feel very confident in what they stand by what they feel. And at some point, I mean, we can't change people, right? So, I mean, that's why for me, I mean, because I'm still dealing with stuff as a Black woman. I mean, still fighting for that, you know, and being able to be seen in different spaces. So, I mean, there's fights all over, and that's not minimizing somebody else's fight, but I'm just saying, you know, you gotta just keep living. I mean, you gotta just keep going. So, yeah, and
I just wanted to say that too, because I think, you know, I can talk to somebody young like you in particular. You know, I've had 6 kids. I got a daughter and as a junior right now. You know what's funny is I'm glad I've lived long enough to see this country be as great as it is. And it always makes these changes, you know, long before you were ever thought of. In 1966, I couldn't have sat next to her. I mean, I'm talking about 1966. This couldn't have even have been a panel. Like, we could not have been on this dais together in a lot of states in this country. And then you just evolve. This country always seems to get it right at some point, sometimes a little slower than others, and it will get there. And I marvel at the fact that we're having this conversation, but I would disagree with one thing. You said something, and I think you said I have it. You said to Rodney, well, that's not, even though your opinion isn't very popular, you're wrong. It is
I'm
very
here, right
popular.
here.
That's what I
No,
mean.
right here. Yeah, I'm
No,
right
that's
here.
my point, though.
Yes.
That's my point.
Yes.
Sometimes we talk in these little inner circles,
Yes.
and we populate the rest of the world.
Yes.
And then you send people out awfully naive, because the
No.
rest of the world, a lot of the world,
No, that's
they're
very
right.
true. That is a great
very
point.
Rodney. So that, I think we have
Yes.
to do, we have to not make Rodney feel like
Oh,
he's.
Rodney.
No, I know, I'm just saying, no, my point is, I'm talking to the audience here.
Yes.
Is that Rodney's opinion, when you walk outside this door, is very popular.
Very true.
Very popular.
And first off, thank you for your comments,
Very
and,
true, Jimmy. Yeah.
my comment, I hope it wasn't directed towards me. I'm glad that you are feeling the way that you feel and that you're comfortable expressing it. I think that's an amazing thing. And the problem with the interplay between your conversations is that too long has the Judeo-Christian, this is a Christian country mindset been legalized. And it's not. We have the First Amendment that says there has to be a separation. It didn't say it literally. It says there shall be no establishment of religion. So we can't legislate based off of what the Bible says. You can live your life based on what the Bible says. But I can't tell her that she can't love who she wants to because of the Bible says and have that legally enforced. Or fire because of who you are and who you love or how you identify. And that is, to Jimmy's point, slowly changing, and change unfortunately is too slow. But I think the biggest thing about the LGBT trans, one of the victories, I think it was last year, was, and I can't remember, I remember Obergefell, I remember the gay marriage name, but I can't remember the name of the case last year, that it was written by Neil Gorsuch, who's a right-leaning justice, who essentially ruled that you can't fire someone because they're trans or gay, and I think that's from a right-leaning person, that's finally kind of some of the erosion of this traditional Judeo-Christian mindset, where some of those views on sexuality have been ingrained. So I think it is changing. It's to your point.
And thank you, because I want to get to another topic because I need this to go on.
I told my wife not to wait up, so we're here.
This can go all night. So, but I do like what you said because then I want to kind of segue into marriage equality, right? Because you kind of touched on that, and I wanted to get that kind of as a good segue into that because some things are very recently. I mean, still today, I think that people have issue with marriage equality. And I know sometimes now when we talk about marriage equality, a lot of times people just kind of sum it up with when you come to like homosexuality and things. But marriage equality goes a little bit further than that. So, I mean, do you all feel like people still have an issue with that? Because, and I know, let me preface it with this. I know a lot of times we say because people are not getting married traditionally, right? And that really was what a point that I wanted to bring up, Pat, is because what's traditional to us is not traditional to somebody else, right? Somebody else in another part of the world they grew up with polygamy. They grow up with all different type of marriages. And so when we go by traditional, it's usually based on a white Christian perspective in the United States. I mean, that's just historically how it's been, right? So do you all feel like people still have an issue with marriage equality in regards to, I mean, you can say black and white or like interracial or also sexual, orientation?
I didn't even think about the racial aspect of it. I was thinking just straight.
Well, people always talk about it just as
66.
Yeah.
But one of the proudest moments I ever had in my life was I was actually at the Supreme Court, standing on the steps with a marriage equality flag. I was right there when they made the ruling with this ABC hat on, which made a strange picture. But I mean, it really was. But here's the thing, and this is where you take your own personal issues and you literally can juxtapose them on with other aggrieved groups of folks. So you look at being a black person in this country. You look at the horrific treatment that black people had in this country, and primarily because we were different. The idea that black people wouldn't be the staunchest advocates for marriage equality because people were different always befuddled me. Like I could never understand the hypocrisy in that. Like I always thought they should be the biggest champions of that because it is a civil right conducted in a religious institution in many respects.
Yeah.
But the law never said Catholics had to marry gay people. It never said that by any stretch. It just simply said that as a legal citizen in this country, you should have no different right than any other legal citizen in this country. And as long as it was a civil right, you couldn't make a case that gay people couldn't be married unless you just simply said, I hate gay people and gay people shouldn't get married, because it made no other sense. So the idea that people continue to argue against that is a civil discrimination. Nobody said you have to do it in your church, and churches to this very day don't. So there was never that order, and that's an important distinction to make, that this was a civil right. It was not about this thing, we're gonna blow up the Catholic churches if they don't, it was never that. But people make it that because it makes a compelling argument.
Well, because traditionally,
right,
they say you're supposed to get married in a church,
but that
right?
goes back to 1966 with the Loving case that you brought up. You couldn't marry in 11 states. You couldn't have interracial marriage.
Yeah.
But again, it was a civil issue and not a religious issue. So you can go back.
Sometimes we get those two things all kind of mixed up, don't we? Does anybody else have any points about marriage equality?
Can I just blow it up completely and talk about polyamory?
Well,
no, it's okay. We don't have to. I was asking.
We've got a question.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Well, let's have a question, and we'll come back to because that is. I mean, people do get married that way.
So I have always, when I was younger, I was a Christian. I did believe in God, and I thought I would always get married in a church. And then recently, probably in the past year, I realized I don't want that because I'm a polytheist. I wouldn't call it a religion, but I have I believe in many gods, and I don't want to get married in a church because I don't want to be put in that box that I was always put in when I was younger, because I thought something about it, and my friend told me I was wrong, because her family is extremely Christian, and she told me I was wrong, and that's not true. And then all my other friends, they tell me that's dumb. That's not true. It's not possible, because I've never met another person other than my dad who believes in many gods.
Thank you. Yes.
So I just had one thought when I was listening to both of these discussions, and Jim and I were talking about it earlier. We're talking about how people view things from different angles, different experiences. But what do we do when issues are weaponized? And this is one of those issues that seems to get put all together and used as a weapon to intentionally divide people. And for me, and Jimmy and I were talking about that, seeing a lot of that right now. It's not just this issue, but there are a litany of issues that are being used right now specifically to divide communities. And so what frustrates me, I view myself as an ally who's learning still, right? I haven't gotten to the point, where I fully understand everything. But I want to learn. I want to keep an open mind. I always want to meet new people, hear the new experiences. But I get most frustrated by those that lack the ability to grow and are actually trying to cause harm. And I think this is one of those issues we have to be careful with, in that sometimes people are trying to divide us. They're trying to use it to stoke anger, fear. There's a segment that just, they don't want to learn. They don't want to hear about it. They don't want to grow. They don't want to consider. They want to fight you. And so, I would just love to hear what you guys think. Jimmy, I've been seeing it for a while. This might help. I'm a school board member, so I've seen a lot weaponized. I've seen a lot weaponized over the course of the last 6 months. But this is one of these issues that scares me a little bit, because I do feel like it's going to continue to be weaponized to cause division amongst all of us.
Yeah, thank you.
So I'll comment briefly. I agree 100% with what you're saying. And one of the things, and I've had this conversation with Aaron before, is I think that most of us are way more alike than anybody wants to believe. And I blame a lot of our division on the mainstream media and the way they report stories. You can look at a Fox News article and see one thing, and CNN reports something totally different. It's the same damn event. It doesn't make any sense, because they're driving a wedge, and it doesn't make sense. Really, our beliefs are probably way more aligned than any of us even ever believe, but we never get to that point because we don't do this, because of the wedges that are driven by everybody that's trying to tell you what you're supposed to believe.
While I do believe that the mainstream media does try to divide us a lot, and they do a pretty good job of doing that, these divisions are there and have always been there. The mainstream media is not going to make a slightly racist person way more racist. If you're open-minded, you're going to be open-minded to things, and the media is not going to influence you that much. So I think a big thing is therapy. You have to be willing to learn and be willing to want to grow for yourself. And I think that we are all being really civil right now, and this is a place that we can be open, but in the real world, it's not like that. And people have way more strong opinions and are way more honest with themselves. And I think that I really think it just needs to be explored.
But this is like a dress rehearsal for those
That's,
conversations.
and that's what I'm saying. This is our real world, and that's what the beauty
Yeah.
of this is, because I agree with you. Because everybody's really on their best behavior and being very kind and very nice to each other. But I think that I think that everybody on this platform and out here is being really genuine. But I do agree with you that it's tough out there. So this is where this begins, is being open and honest, because a lot of things are being weaponized. But we have to be honest and say, hey, I don't know everything. I want to learn, but do it I think it's all about intentions, right? What are your intentions, and do you really want to learn? Because I do believe that somebody that is a racist or somebody that's hateful, they're just going to be that way no matter what, right? I mean, it's some people I talk to that no matter what you say to them, they are just gonna be nasty, and you have to just kind of give them a little love and send them on their way. Leave them where they are, because I mean, just some people you just can't budge, but I appreciate what you said, because it is true. I mean, some people are just who they are.
I have to defend the media, and I'm not in it. I do. I'm one of those people. I am so tired of the media getting blamed for your poor character. I'm just like fed up with it. I really am. That's who you are. At the end of the day, you know, we had, and this, you want to be weaponized today. Like, you want that. You desire it. You seek it out. You find it, and now you're weaponized, and it's somebody else's fault. In the day, that's why I'm glad that we have generational differences. In the day when you only had 3 TV stations,
yes,
you had to be fed. You were fed. That's right. You were fed what you were going to learn. You have 1,000 opportunities to turn the damn channel. 1,000 of them. You don't have to watch the news. You can watch Hulu. You can watch whatever you want to decompress yourself. But people find that they, instead of searching for peace, they search for hate. They search for the things that feed who they are. And that's exactly what happens. That's how you get January 6th things and all this other stuff. And I agree with you completely. Donald Trump, for example, and well, don't get me started. But the point is, he didn't make people racist. He didn't make you racist. You were racist. You know, nobody makes you that way. Somebody can serve as sort of a catalyst for you to unleash and fuel that, but nobody makes you that. And I would just like to be at a point where we just hold ourselves accountable for the terrible character you bring into anything, and not blame somebody because they happen to be on the news from 6:30 to 7, and now all of a sudden you're a great character turning horrible. We need to start holding people accountable for their actions and not everybody else.
I agree with you to some extent. I think character is lacking with people. I don't think everybody is racist. I think it's a cultural thing. I think people like to belong to groups and they follow groups, and it's a cultural, the biggest virus we have right now is not COVID, it's hate. And that's throughout the world, not just this country. I think talking about media is just a catalyst, it's a communication tool. And it accelerates that hatred. Social media, TV, I'd say the things on these things create more hatred than anything else. So the topics we're talking about do create division. That's why we're discussing them. We're trying to find that connection. I think the first connection we have, we're all human beings, we all belong to the human race. That's the first thing. If we can have that connection, then our individualities are kind of blessings, are our individualities that make us who we are. So I think it's a cultural shift we need to do. Having conversations like this more often and understanding each other and respecting each other and allowing people to be who they are, you know, and communicating that. That's where it all starts, I think.
But there are things that unhinge that, and I'll give you a classic example, and you as a Muslim man. So, you know, everybody felt like they had evolved as a people. Everybody felt comfortable. And then 9/11 happened. How'd you feel then? You know why? Because it revealed a lot of stuff about people. We come in with prejudices. We all have prejudices. Every single one of us. I don't care if it's a weight thing, a gay thing, a Muslim thing, you have prejudices. And people feed that. A character thing to me is something that happens in your house. It's not something you find on this stupid thing here. You bring whatever was grown up in your house is what happens on this phone. And so to your point, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Yeah. But I think at the end of the day, personal accountabilities of who we are as people is a lot bigger than this media thing.
Can I just add to that a little bit? Because
and
it's
then
very important.
After you do that, we have somebody
sure.
back.
Just to put things in context, I think the character and the cultural thing, that's most of us. The people who are responsible for the extreme hate, like the 9/11 or the extreme right, they're disenfranchised from main society. They've latched onto a belief that's causing this destruction. They need help. Okay?
Or the extreme left.
And you can't treat them all the same. They're all different issues.
Yeah. Thank you, Nadine. Thank you, Jimmy.
I just wanted to point out in both of the conversations that we've had thus far, there's been kind of an underlying theme of
I guess, culture or kind of your upbringing. So in the case of gay marriage, for example, a lot of people do not agree with it because of how they were culturally brought up. This kind of makes me think of the whole theory of the melting pot versus the mosaic. America has always been kind of themed as this melting pot. So cultures blend, everybody kind of becomes one, but in the same sense, that idea kind of strips away this idea that people can have their own identities or opinions. So if somebody is against gay marriage, instead of them just saying this is personally something that I don't want, they turn it into, well, my religion says that I can't do this, this is wrong, so nobody should be able to do it. Instead of looking at it as I have my own personal opinion, I can just kind of digest that, sit on that however I want, and just let other people do as they please. So I think kind of the whole issue with it is, since America is built kind of based on a Christian base, it's more of a you must assimilate to what I want you to do because this is what our founding fathers want, instead of looking at everybody's cultural backgrounds and their own personal backgrounds.
No, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think it goes back to what Nadine was talking about how people want to be a part of something, right? So if they feel like they have this huge backing of like their religion or their whatever, if they feel like they have this whole backing of support, and instead of just standing on their own 2 feet and saying, this is what I think, this is why I think it, for whatever reason, most people don't even have a reason why they don't like certain things personally. It's just because, well, my group says that I'm not supposed to. And that's where it goes to like kind of being a free thinker and just kind of saying, okay, why do I really not like that? What does it do to me, you know, inside of me, when these people do what they do, whatever it is, not just with sexual, I mean, just anything. You know, that's how I look at it. So I agree with you, and I agree with the point about how people feel like they have to, I think, be a part of something, a group, and most people use that to back up their points. We have somebody in the back. Oh, okay, go ahead.
One thing I wanted to speak about, you know, people talking about media and different things. I've seen several children here talking about it. You know, coming up, I use comic books and stuff like that as an escape. You know, I go to get a couple cents, $1, whatever, go get comics. And it exposed me to a lot of different things. You know, you learn values in comics, all different types of things. So I said, cool, you know, I'm going to introduce my son to the same thing. I get ready to go get a comic book, and the latest edition coming up is showing Superman as a bisexual kissing a man. Now, with something like that, you know, a 6-year-old child gets exposed to that. You know, it reminds me of being in Detroit. I'm walking up to pay for something. There's pornography all in the window. With an Arab guy, I said, listen, man, where you come from, your children, you wouldn't have this on display with, you know, all of this. So it's a little deeper because I believe there is sort of a campaign on both ends of it. Because children at that age, starting 3, 4, 5, you know, reading comics, everything I read early, how are you going to be exposed to something like that and not be affected? I think that goes a little beyond acceptance, in my opinion. It's almost like propagating something, or, you know what I mean, plant the seed in the child's mind. So it's not a fact of, oh, you know, change the channel or whatever. How you know, Superman comics now, you know, I want to know the view on things like that.
Would you feel the same way if he was kissing Lois Lane?
Would I feel the same way? What?
I'm just trying to flip the narrative here. You're saying I'm assuming you're saying that the exposure is having a negative effect on children, but I'm wondering if you try to look at it from a neutral point of view and say, how does that not apply? Well, if the narrative is the traditional narrative, because I think those two things need to be reconciled.
Well, I understand that, you know, as a parent, I believe everybody has a right to at least have that, you know, that opportunity. You know, you can be watching a cartoon with your son and doze off and something else totally is coming on. And it's like, okay, for instance, another example, when I was a child, you know, a young kid run through, a guy had a nudie book, it was all rotten, everything else, be like, hey man, look at this, you know, wow. After seeing that, it did put an impression on you, you know what I mean? Things like that have an impression. So personally, yeah, I think I would feel differently based on, you know, my beliefs. I do. But I mean, I think that goes beyond. That's like, you know, propagation almost. Who are you approaching with these things? I mean, it's geared towards children. So I mean, I can understand. It is my point to teach because I don't teach in my home hate. because they're gay or whatever else. But at the same time, I don't believe in children like sponges at that age. I don't believe in exposing our children to all different types of things. At least, I just don't.
I was just trying to point out that they're exposed to other traditions.
Heterosexual, so,
Yeah, we just don't think about it because it's traditional.
Right.
And I guess the question would be, why is it okay to expose them to Superman kissing Lois Lane, but not Superman kissing a man? Why is that inherently wrong? That's one question. And the second question is, why is a nudie magazine the same as two people kissing fully clothed?
Thank you.
Those are two separate things. I think sex is different than sexual orientation. I don't want my 3-year-old seeing two naked people going at it on the screen. I don't want to see that. He doesn't understand it. And there's responsibility that goes with sex that they need to understand and that needs to be taught. But just who loves who? We have gay friends that, and I'm not going to tell them, please don't kiss each other in front of my son. I in fact want him to see that because I want him to be okay with it, because I don't want people to be persecuted, and I don't want to have the conversation when he's 10 that, okay, well, for hundreds of years, people have only agreed to, or only accepted people marrying of the other sex. Like, I want him to have that. And so I guess my concern is that you look at the man kissing a man as inherently something bad equated with a nudie magazine or some sort of rough pornography. And I think that's kind of the conversation we were having earlier as to the generational norms, because you kept going back to you growing up as a kid. And I agree, when I was a kid, that was not
Well, there's so much stuff different now. I mean, because
Yeah.
I was talking
about
to someone,
Right,
right.
and I'm speaking of exposure.
And why is that exposure
Even
bad?
some of these comics now, you look at the way they dress now compared to the way they were dressed in the 70s.
Well,
That's a different concept.
Right.
Yeah,
So that's the point that I was going to make, was that when I was younger, I was talking to somebody the other day how we would watch TV and there was certain stuff that they wouldn't even play during the daytime. You guys remember that? Like, you couldn't even see stuff. And like anything, I mean, just like anything, right? You couldn't even see, like, it was like, at nighttime, that's when you had to sneak the TV.
We had a lot of sleepovers for that reason.
Yeah, exactly. And then now everything is, so I think a lot of the thing for some parents is the just exposure of sexuality. Now, see, for me, I'm a little bit different because when my children were younger, I talked to them about everything. Like, anything. Because if it came up, if they saw something or had a question about something, we started to have a conversation. Because for me, it's like, I don't want you to be shocked or try to find out things on your own because you're liking that conversation because I'm uncomfortable. We can't be uncomfortable as parents. We have to talk to our children and expose them to things in a safe way. Let person in the back have their topic. Any questions? Sorry.
So, in a nutshell, I feel like this will be a never-ending conversation. We will all just have to agree to disagree, but I think that the foundation should be operating in love. As far as different religions, everybody has a belief. I am a Christian. I do not agree with their lifestyle, but I don't persecute people. It is between them and God. I had a gay friend when I worked on Mackinac Island. He was crazy. I love Tony. But I don't agree with his lifestyle, but I don't not associate or talk with him or look down upon him because of that. I do agree with Amir. And it doesn't matter if it's heterosexual, homosexual, what you call it?
Pansexual?
Pansexual. I don't care. Little kids don't need to see that. It does plant seeds. They can learn on their own. They can talk with their parents. This is just my opinion. Okay. They need to just be kids. And then as things arise, that's when you have that conversation. Just like prejudice. You put two kids together, they don't know until what? Until they're taught. They're blank slates.
That's a hard balance for me, right?
Yeah.
It's a hard balance for me in the not talking about it and just kind of letting them discover it on their own,
Right.
and then the giving too much, right?
Right.
So that's not really a question. I'm just saying, like, that's a tough balance for me, right? Because at some point, you have to be educated on something, right?
You do,
Right.
exactly. But what I'm saying is like, let them be kids. You know, you get to junior high or whatever, you got sex education and it's horrible. They need to evolve with that.
And you know, by junior high, we was,
Right.
I mean, come on, let's be
Yeah.
honest. By that time, you.
So then, you know, and it's up to the parents too. But that's why a lot of people need parenting classes, because every parent ain't good. They don't know what they're doing. We don't. No, if people write books, you still don't know what you're doing, because every child is different, every circumstance is different.
I'm
every
just saying, and
situation.
we'll go to another, comment or a question, but I just, you know, cause I've worked with children know way more than parents think they do. I don't know why we live in this delusional state that kids don't know stuff and they're not exposed to stuff. With access to all these gadgets, they have, I mean, the world at their fingertips. So we have to stop, my opinion is that we have to stop acting like we live in this little bubble and, you know, they'll discover it eventually. It's like, no, we have to talk to them about it, because to me, if we don't help them understand, they're going to figure out to make their thoughts about it, and you know, then in junior high, they'll be kissing in the locker room instead of, you know, where you go ahead, you have to question, I'm sorry.
First of all, I want to start by saying that this conversation is exactly what needs to happen. I love the love in this room. I love that everybody feels comfortable sharing their ideas and opinions. And it shows because our younger generation feels confident in expressing how they feel. So congratulations to everybody on that, because it's not an easy thing to do.
No, it's not.
I do want to bring it back a little bit and just give a gentle reminder that although we use terms like sexual orientation, it's not all about sex. It's not about what we do in our bedroom. It's about who we love. And really bringing it to that sense of community when you don't feel you have that sense of community because you don't have these types of exposure. It is so incredibly brave for people to step out and say, you know what, I know that this might not exist, but I exist, and I exist in this element, I exist in this realm, and I don't know that I have a community that backs me, but I want to start one. That is incredible. And by doing gentle exposures like the comic books and things like that, it lets the younger generation know that they do not feel alone, that there is a community. It brings light to the topic, because at the end of the day, just because people aren't talking about it doesn't mean that people don't feel a specific way. And I think it comes back to the original topic of, do people choose to be gay, or are they born that way? And if you ask a lot of the LGBTQ plus community, they will say that they were born that way. So it doesn't matter if they had exposure or not, they're still gonna have those feelings, they're still gonna have those thoughts. And now they have an arena where they can exist, and that's really important.
Thank you, thank you.
That was actually something just because the word exposure kept getting thrown out, and for me, it was representation. Because I grew up watching so many movies of young boys falling in love with young girls and the kiss at the end of the movie, and there wasn't anything sexual about those kids' movies where people are falling in love, but it was very heteronormative. And so with, Jonathan Kent, the young Superman kissing a boy, what I noticed, a lot of people very upset about this, but nobody was upset when Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn started dating.
Well, that's a whole nother conversation.
Right, and so, but anyways, to bring it back to your.
People seem to be okay with that a lot of times.
So, but to go back to bring kind of how this conversation is expanded back to the original question. It was about marriage equality, and so, to bring it back to that, like something that you had said, which I absolutely agree with. I grew up in the church. I have a degree in biblical studies. I'm agnostic pagan now, like it's fine. But I grew up in that culture, in that environment where like it's very heteronormative. This is what marriage is. This is what it is. I couldn't reconcile myself with that belief, and that was a big part of why I left the church, because that wasn't a standard that I could live my life to and still be me. And I always believed that God, if that's who's out there, he would rather have me question and find my own path than to just question him blindly, like the lukewarm water and like, well, I'm just doing it because you told me to, like, all right. But like, that stops at the church door. That's what you were talking about. Nobody's forcing the churches to marry the gays.
Right.
Like, nobody's making you throw a ceremony for me. But it's an issue when I go, okay, well then I'll go to the courthouse and you still tell me no.
Yeah.
Like, where do you stop making rules about my life and making choices about who I get to love and how I get to love them and still receive the same benefits that you do, loving the person and being married to the person that you love?
Right.
When does that stop? When does your belief, stop? And where does my life allow to take over? And I think that's the big thing. And even with it's the same thing with the Loving case. Like, all of marriage equality is when we're all allowed to have our opinion. And I think this is a beautiful example of everybody being able to say how they feel, hear how other people feel. But when do we stop and go, well, I said my piece, this is how I feel about it, so I'm just gonna hang back and let you do your side of it, or no, I'm going to advocate and fight to have not only your marriage annulled or whatever, but like the Supreme Court decision reversed.
Well, and that's the $1 million
Like,
question. I mean, that's like across the board, right?
Right.
If people don't like something, they like to make sure that everybody knows they don't like it, but if we like things, we don't speak up enough about it, in my opinion. Does anybody else up here have
I just want to say one thing.
Sure, and then we'll get your question.
But, and that's what I mean. I've seen a growing intolerance from people who were intolerated. And I see it. I see it a lot. It's like, Superman. Superman. You, as a boy, you grew up with Superman, generational stuff. Superman was the epitome of masculinity.
Oh, he was alpha male,
Superman.
right?
I'm being serious. Superman.
Yeah.
And then you pick up the book and he's kissing a boy. So my thing is, don't throw him out the window because everything he grew up with now has changed and he's supposed to be right there. That's unfair. It's grossly unfair, and it's even worse when you condemn him or embarrass him or call him out about it. Those things happen. People have to gradually find their way there, and the more you keep doing this to them, when you talk about those small groups of extremists, that's who they are. They're the people who get shut out, who get shunned, embarrassed, called out, condemned, all those words. Why? Because they didn't understand, or they just didn't get it when you wanted them to get it.
So you
Those
saying
people
create
have
another
been-
superhero that's gay?
That's why.
You create another superhero,
No,
don't chase
SNL
Superman
already
sex.
It's no, Robin is bisexual. I don't.
I think, quite honestly, the more and more you look at stuff back, like in the past, some of the past things, I think a lot of things had undertones, they just didn't talk about it. I think a lot of different things had undertones that we just are seeing now, like, oh, I didn't get that was that, so, but I
We're
was,
doing
But
episodes.
just don't be intolerant.
right.
Just don't be a group of intolerant people when you come from intolerance. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's
But
one
you
thing
know
you
what,
gotta-
But one thing I was, I'm sorry, Ronnie, you go.
I was just gonna say that, there are Christians today facing persecution because of their beliefs. And, there's people being martyred because of their beliefs. And how do we look at the tolerance aspect of things when somebody has a very strong conviction concerning, being engaged in, say, a marriage ceremony, or, baking a cake,
Yeah, that was a big, yeah.
or one of those things, and their conviction is that strong that they're willing to give up the business, money, in order to stand in what they believe. And yet, certain radical, and I use the term radical, people want to go after them at every turn to try to get them to bankrupt them or to go totally out of business. And that's evil. To me, that is evil.
Yeah, I agree, that is evil. I also wanted to add on to, when you talked about being intolerant. I see a lot of intolerance within the community, though. I mean, people, that's what, I think in all of our communities, in the LGBTQ plus community, there's intolerance. Within Black groups, we're intolerant sometimes. I think it's just a human thing sometimes where people don't understand, like, wait a minute, hey, having that empathy. It goes back to empathy. Like, hey, I know what that feels like to feel isolated. I know what that feels like to not be tolerated. And, you know, I want to be able to extend that grace to somebody else and like accept them as they are. You know, go ahead. I thought she had, do your sister have her hand?
Yeah, as well.
Okay.
So basically going back to the Superman thing, right? So
And then we're gonna go to
you
another.
you don't like the fact that Superman is kissing a boy, right? But Superman, though, I have read the comics. I love DC, Marvel, all that stuff. But you're okay with your kids seeing gore at 6. I know that stuff has gore, blood, bone, that kind of stuff.
You're making an assumption there, young lady.
But I'm saying.
I don't want my kids to gore and all of that either. I
But
didn't
that's
say
what's in the
I
comics.
see. This is what he's speaking of too, in a way. Not meaning to cut you off or disrespect you. You automatically assume, don't like, off the head everybody who's gay. That's not the point. I'm saying if somebody makes a decision as a distributor to put something out that they know the market is geared towards children, there should be some type of situation because there are parents who at least want to be notified. Just like the latest thing at the school where they had the questionnaire with all this stuff about sex. As a parent, give me the opportunity to choose whether or not I want my child exposed to it. If you're going to market my children, or you want my money for it's fine. If your mother wants to get you there, that's fine. That doesn't mean I hate them. I'm talking about exposure. So, don't assume I watch all kind of crazy stuff with my kids.
I don't think that you're being forced to buy that comic for your kid.
No.
Because, it is your choice completely to buy or expose those things to your kids. Therefore, there are jobs where I am assuming again, that there are other comics, And I know for a fact, it's the same thing as when Barbies had their big thing about body positivity, where they had all these different Barbies that were bigger, skinnier, shorter, taller, all these different things. Ones with cancer that didn't have any hair, all these different things, right? Those things are also exposing, but they're not exposing to sexuality. Is that the difference? That was my question for you.
The question was, do I have a problem with cancer Barbie? What are you saying? I'm not trying to be funny. You kind of went off. I don't quite understand. What
I'm saying is the sexuality part of the problem, because it's not just about sex. It's about the fact that, my sexuality, being bisexual, I just want to be able to hold hands with a girl, watch a movie that has something to do with us, and be able to go to the movies without being hate crimed or being told that I'm the F slur or the D slur or being saying that I'm going to hell or I'm going to burn or I'm disgusting.
And I think that we all agree with that. I think it goes back to what we talked about earlier about generational thought processes, right? When one person sees something as this is just who I am, somebody else sees it as a sexual thing. And this is where language and understanding and not being ignorant comes into play. So I think that it's just sometimes language and being able to understand a little bit more from each side, and also being tolerant of each side. That's the part that always is so interesting to me, and I preach it from the mountaintop in regards to, we all think differently. Right? And I can't force Michael to think exactly how, even though I would love to have everybody think just like that. I can't force him to think just like me, and vice versa. So I think we have to show each other a little bit grace when it comes to that and these learning things. And then some people, honestly, like we said earlier, some people just will feel how they feel. And that's just how it is. And unfortunately, it's just how it is. So we'll get one more point, and then we're going to go on to our next topic, and then that'll probably be our last topic.
Okay, so I have read books and I have watched shows that have LGBTQ people in them, and I'm like, yes, expose me to this. I want to know more. I want to have all the information I can. I want to have it all up in my brain because I hate the idea of dying and not knowing enough, not knowing truth. So that's why I want to know. I want to be exposed to it. I want you to tell me. I want to know everything that everybody else knows. I want to know.
Yeah.
So that's why I tried looking at other people's perspectives as best that I can from what I know about them, and I tried so hard to wrap my mind around all these different concepts, but it's sort of hard in school because they don't teach you about any of the stuff. But something happened with these two students, and I'll go home and say, Azealia, this is what happened. Tell me everything.
Right. Thank you. We're going to try to go over one more topic. This one is, we probably should have led with this one.
You should have stuck with the Braves and Astros.
Right, exactly. So what's so interesting is that this was a topic that I did not want to talk about, but we wanted to talk about it as a whole. So I said, let's do it. Why not? This is what we're all about, right? Having tough conversations. So we're going to talk about vaccine mandates. Whew, I got it. Vaccine mandates. So that is a hot topic right now. As we know, mask mandates, of course, but vaccine mandates are a hot topic. So I don't know who wants to start off with what they feel
I'll
about.
start off.
Okay. And then Pat, you want to go next? Okay.
I just have more questions to focus the conversation.
Sure. Okay.
I made a joke.
Jimmy. Okay.
No, I made a joke today on Facebook about, I wondered if the anti-vaxxers were the same as the pro-choice people.
Okay, so I
my
think that's
choice,
a
my
discussion.
body. It's funny, but no, I'm totally against, I'll take the controversial side here. I'm totally against mandates now. Not necessarily before, but you talk about evolution. So I certainly, and I'm against mandates on both sides of this issue. And that's what's interesting. I think it got compounded when there were, you can't ask somebody to vaccinate, but now you can't vaccinate anyway, even if somebody, it's a weird situation we're in. So for school districts that wanted to vaccinate, there are bills right now that passed that says you can't. So everybody's in this kind of crazy world right now. And I think with what we've learned, what we've known, people have lost their minds on this whole issue. I mean, no, they really have. They've lost their minds. And I'll give you a classic example. I walk into, and I'm in Lansing every day, sit with legislators. I don't care what committee room you go in, no matter what. Senate, House, you walk in, right side of the aisle, not a mask. Left side of the aisle, everybody's got masks on. It ain't science anymore. It's political.
Yes.
It's political. And that's, so, you listen to all these different versions of it, and I think people are smart enough now. I'm around people, quite frankly, who don't have suicide pacts. People who want to live. They got smarter. They've learned how to isolate, social. They've learned all the tricks and tools to stay alive. And I don't think you can mandate keeping people alive. I just don't. I don't think you can give somebody a will to stay alive.
Yeah.
And so that it's just become more divisive, and that's my.
Yeah.
It certainly is divisive, and I guess the question is the mandate from what body?
That's what I was
This is where being a human and a lawyer are two different things. Because I may feel one way, but may think that the authority to do something comes from a different body where it's not able to come from a different body. So if you're talking about a school board, that's one thing, and I would ask Jimmy, what would you think about if it's an employer making that mandate? And that's, I think those are two different concepts.
I don't think employers should do it.
And that's.
I do not. I don't think so. I'm against it, period.
Period, no mandates, period.
No,
Yeah, it sounds like period, yeah.
Okay, but you believe that the employer has the ability to do that?
I do.
Okay.
And I think they should always have the ability to do it, which is interesting because there are bills introduced to keep employers by pro-business people. That's why the world's upside down. I mean, it was Republicans that told business owners, no, you can't mandate. Like, when did Republicans start telling business owners how to run their business? The world is crazy. It is nuts. So I don't believe in those kind of things.
But I love that there's people like you that can actually recognize.
You know me, Mike, I recognize crazy everywhere.
Well, I think one of the issues with the vaccine that makes it so volatile is the fact that it has not been fully authorized also, that it was rushed into production. A lot of people have been throwing out the analogy of the polio vaccine, and how they were able to eradicate polio by having everybody vaccinated. Well, that's all well and good, but the polio vaccine was vetted for decades and then finally introduced, and then ultimately it was implemented and everybody got the shot, and now we don't have polio. This is not the same scenario at all. I mean, we're dealing with We're dealing with a drug that was rapidly produced.
And some people will argue that, right? Because you've seen the arguments when people say that the SARS or COVID type.
COVID has existed for decades.
Right,
And there's no
right.
doubt. But this actual version of COVID hasn't existed for decades. This is a totally different COVID.
Right,
And the testing for this COVID was not for decades. It was literally for a couple months. And then suddenly we got this emergency use authorization for this vaccine, and we don't even know what it's gonna do to anybody. And a lot of people have gotten it, a lot of people haven't gotten it, and I think it's absolutely their choice. I don't think anybody should be mandated to get it. But, we may find out in 10 years that, everyone that got it grows a third nipple. I don't know.
Oh.
So, we don't know what to say.
Aaron, I want to say this. My opinion is qualified. I am vaccinated. I don't have a problem telling people that. So I've got all my vaccinations. So my principal position is just that. It's not because I'm an anti-vaxxer.
Well, and there's a lot of people
So I'm
that, yeah.
vaccinated. But that's my point.
There's what we're seeing, if you're hit around the money, it's political, bottom line.
Very.
Because there's a ton of scientists and doctors that disagree with this vaccination process and what's going on. One of them was, we were talking about this vaccines being mRNA. The very man who did the discovery work and a lot of the work on it says, we gotta slow this down. We gotta stop this for right now, because we don't know the end results of it. When you're talking mRNA, you're talking DNA, and you're talking proteins and protein spikes, which is basically what we are. And so the science is not there. The science does not support, there's debates both sides of the issue.
Yeah.
But a lot of the foremost scientists that have been looking at this stuff says, we gotta slow it down or stop it.
My
And
only
find
comment
out
to
what the
that,
results
my
are.
only comment to the
Jimmy, after you, I
science,
want, just like Pat may have.
my only comment to the science is our pathologists, when they pronounce people dead, like that's a real science too. So, so people can talk about the fact that they don't believe it or not, but there are a whole lot of people dead, really dead. And that science is certainly more persuasive, which is one of the reasons I got vaccinated. I believe that science. So there's a mitigated risk you take, obviously, with the vaccination. I don't shame anybody who doesn't do it. I just don't.
So I mean, basically you're saying that you believe that people should have the choice to inject everybody.
Absolutely. I don't think people should be mandated.
Yeah. Pat?
I think we should be careful talking about what the science is or isn't, because I don't think anyone on this panel is a medical professional. And so, we all see what we've seen, and we all have made our personal choice. I get my booster on Friday. So, because my wife is a medical professional, and she looked at the science that was available, and we made the decision to do that. Do I think everyone should get vaccinated? Absolutely. I think they should, for everything that they're able to get vaccinated for.
Yeah.
Like, there are statistical vaccine injuries. That is a fact that's going to happen with any sort of vaccine. So it is a calculated risk. The risk is so minuscule that I was comfortable doing it. To the question of whether or not you should be mandated, that's where being a lawyer comes in. What mechanism allows the government to do that? And that's what I struggle with, because while I do think that everyone should get it,
Right.
I don't know under what mechanism we're able to do that. And Jimmy's point on Facebook is a funny one. It's good to have humor about these things.
My choice, yeah.
But I also believe that there are degrees to that. And when there's a public health, I think there's a difference between a public health emergency that is ongoing now for 2 years and the pro-choice argument. I think they're dissimilar. And so the boiling it down to my body, my choice is now a quick comeback at those people. But I think they are dissimilar situations. One has an effect on the I can infect you type thing, whereas the other one is a little bit.
Can't you infect somebody with the vaccine though too?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just asking.
You can, but
Yeah.
it helps mitigate it, and if you are vaccinated, then.
But you're never gonna win that argument when you talk about how many people have died from the virus versus how many people have died from abortion. I would not want to take that argument up. You're just never gonna gain any traction. And you're talking 2 years. The pro-life people would talk about like 200 years. So, I mean, and again, I'm not making a side on it, because I agree with you, but that's not an argument you win when you use, and I've heard people use that argument, well, look how many people a guy, it's an ongoing health crisis. There's nothing more ongoing than the death of a baby. I'm using the pro-life argument.
No, I understand, but if you boil it down, then it gets to that argument. But I think they are.
Well, it always gets to that argument.
Sure, but I think they are
And then there's the right side of the aisle and the left side of the aisle.
I think they're dissimilar.
Always. That's my point. It gets political.
Yeah.
And I have to disagree with what
And
he
then we're
said.
gonna have somebody in the audience.
I have to disagree with what he said. I have studied the science. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, but I've done my research. I've checked it out. I've checked out scientists and people who are in the field, who are medical field, specifically who studied this out. My feelings on this is based on that. It's not based on an opinion of a neophyte or somebody who has no idea what's going on in the medical field.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to talk about this in a couple different points. When I hear the word mandate, I also hear what's around that, which is force and a restriction of access, which is exactly what the mandates and passports have been talking about. So in this part of the world, we see force used in certain ways, but in most of us are probably aware that we would not want something forced on us medically in most situations. I mean, even in an emergency situation, would we want force or would we want care? If we go to our doctor, do we want them to hear us? Do we want to be able to ask questions and get accurate, informed answers? Do we want our doctor and healthcare provider to walk through the process of informed consent with us? If we do, then it's probably obvious that a mandate would completely circumvent what we've probably all been privileged enough to experience at least a little bit in our lifetimes here. So that's one aspect about the word mandate that really makes me feel alert. And recently I was part of a group where I saw a post that said that those people who were not getting vaccinated were suffering from entitlement. It was a different lens. I really hadn't looked at it that way, especially because I'm a proponent for informed consent, way before COVID ever came around, on all issues. I've seen what happens when people have medical care forced on them. It's not care anymore. It's trauma. And it can change their whole life. The other thing that I'll just leave with is that the most recent research that's out regarding the vaccines in 5 to 11-year-olds is mirroring the research that's now being shown on those for teenagers, where the risk of myocarditis from the vaccine may be higher than the risk of being hospitalized with COVID. Have you ever had myocarditis? Have you had a loved one who's had myocarditis? My second husband had it from a strep infection. He almost died. He could have died. He was sick for 2 months afterwards. He was a perfectly healthy, athletic man. To subject someone to something that has that kind of a risk without informed consent, is that really what we want to stand for in our country? So I'll leave you with that and questions to take into your hearts on this issue.
No, thank you, I appreciate that. Yeah, Rick?
I'm actually involved in a case right now. I represent a mother who does not want her teenage boys vaccinated, and dad does. They're divorced, 50-50 custody. And I finished the arguments, and we both had competing experts. And the numbers are completely real. The survival rate for unvaccinated adolescents is 99.997% for unvaccinated. That's 100%. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not minimizing those young people that did die, but that's 100% survival rate. So if you have that great of a survival rate unvaccinated, why on earth would you force these kids to get vaccinated and run the risk of myocarditis or any of the numerous other dangerous side effects? There's a federal website called VAERS that talks about vaccination injuries, and you can go on there and there are literally thousands of vaccination injuries as a result of the COVID vaccine. And it ranges from myocarditis to I mean, I can't even remember them all, there were so many. And the increase, if you look at the increase over the last couple of decades of vaccine injuries, the other ones were the standard vaccines that everybody gets. And I don't think anybody's arguing. I mean, my client's not an anti-vaxxer. Her kids have had all of their vaccinations, all of them. She is simply not in favor of a EUA vaccine being forced on her children. If it gets fully approved, she'll give them the shot. She doesn't have any problem with that. But right now, she does have a problem with it. And so I think you're spot on. I don't think there should be mandates, and I think everybody, especially with adolescents, should just be careful.
The deal with the VAERS, I think, if I'm not mistaken, is like less than 2% are reported. I think it's around 2%, because a lot of doctors don't know about VAERS. And then the ones that do, it's so much paperwork that they have to do over continually, that some of them are just not putting it out there.
And I guess for me, thank you all for those comments. I just have an issue with mandating anything, like on a person's body, where they don't have any chance to be able to say what they want put in their body. And for me, I don't know, maybe it's because I watch Handmaid's Tale, I don't know. But it seems like it's like a slippery slope when you start saying you have to do this, especially when it comes from a fear of something. Like whenever you use fear is associated with emotion to me. And whenever you do something out of an emotional state, and I'm not dismissing the urgency in regards to like the health scares and things that's going on. What I'm saying is that when we start saying that the government or whoever has a right to say, you have to put this into your body, you have to do this. And, and again, back to Pat's point about employers can do their private, they can do what they want to do. I guess for me, when it's this big umbrella of the government saying, you have, because then what's next? What next will they do? And I know I probably sound like a crazy person, but I mean, that's just something that I think about when it comes from, this like, okay, how does this slippery slope happen? Is this something that we're starting here and then it'll go to something else? How do we balance that? So that's my take on it.
And that's why I wanted to focus those questions though, because I think those are dissimilar as well. They're two different concepts. And I struggle with it. I don't know where I come down on it. I just really don't.
Yeah.
Because I think, from my perspective, everything has to emanate from some sort of law and some sort of power. And I don't know how they can do that for some of the reasons that you just brought up. I just don't know the answer to the question. I don't know where I come down.
Yeah, it's a tough.
Can I make a quick comment? I've been vaccinated, but I can see both sides of the situation, both sides of the story. I heard a situation today from a client of mine who's got an assisted living place full of elderly. Mother and father stayed with them, and the son was a total anti-vaxxer, which is fine, that's his right.
Sure.
He was diagnosed with COVID 8-9 days, but he carried on visiting and didn't tell anyone.
Oh, see, that's irresponsible.
I would say that's
and I think some of the people who want everybody vaccinated, and I'm not saying I'm not one of them, I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably they're trying to stop this infection spreading and curbing it, because there are a lot of selfish, irresponsible people who don't really care.
Yeah, I agree.
How do you deal with that? And so maybe it's not vaccinate or not vaccinate, it's not mandate, it's trying to figure out these people, and maybe there should be some.
That's actually one of the questions I had early on when we first started talking about the vaccine, is like it being rushed through, but also being rushed through because we were getting pressure. Well, we need to open businesses up again, and we need to get the economy jump started. And so I feel like the pressure to move it forward so quickly it's like a sliding puzzle. You can't do this until you move this piece here and you do that piece here, and things get slammed around. And so but also I feel like the same people who were forcing us to reopen businesses when people are exposing everyone to COVID are the same ones who don't want to get the vaccination. That is just that correlation or causation or whatever. It's just an interesting thought that I had at the beginning, but I agree with you. Like, people should be mindful. I mean, exposing somebody to COVID, like when I was on dating apps during, I wasn't going out, but like, it almost felt like I was talking to a potential partner about STDs, like. have
Well,
you
I was gonna say
tested?
that,
Like,
well, about AIDS and stuff, it's the
right,
same thing,
but
somebody
yeah,
has
if
sex,
you
you don't
have
have it, I'll let you
AIDS,
know, yeah.
like if I have AIDS and I don't tell people, I don't
Yes.
tell a partner that, and I expose them to that, that's criminal. You can go to jail for that. And like, it feels like that, like this, I have a kid, I'm not, and I had people getting really mad, well, I'm not gonna vaccinate, and I'm not blah, 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 I'm like, that's fine, I'm just not gonna go on a date with you, and that was very offensive.
And there's some people that feel the other side of that if you haven't vaccinated, they don't wanna date you either. I mean, you know, it's like, on both sides of this, it's really extreme, very extreme right now, and very divided. Did you have anything that you guys wanted to add, Aaron or Michael?
I was just gonna say, isn't it funny how everyone knows a doctor who said this?
Oh, yeah.
Everyone knows a scientist who said this, and I think that we really get in the habit of cherry picking what we want to hear when we say that. And I'm just tired. I hear these things that have already been refuted, but I'm just tired. I don't even want to. It's to the point now where I don't even want to get into it again because I'm going to have to get into it next week, and I'm going to be saying the same things. It's just going to be somebody different. And I think, and I was just going to say overall, I think that really what it boils down to is in this country now we had this deep distrust with institutions. And I think there's two ways of looking at that mistrust, and one side mistrusts institutions, and so they immediately reject them, and another side, and I'm not labeling the sides.
Sure.
They mistrust institutions, but they want to work towards making them better.
Okay, Aaron, did you have anything to add?
Not really. I guess my degree is health sciences, so I trust doctors that say that the vaccine is safe and that we should be getting it. That's my question.
Okay.
Good thing to look up sometime is how many approved drugs that the FDA has approved that's been recalled and taken off the market by trusting science all the way. Because there's a lot of them every year that are taken off the market, and that's FDA.
And just a point of clarification too, just for Sarah. Forcing people to go back to work was never about the COVID, just so you know. It was never about coronavirus. I know, Michael knows I know, but no, it was really about the governor's power to shut down businesses. So I can tell you that really was political and not about science or about coronavirus. So the same people who don't like the mandates were just essentially checking the governor's power.
Sure. Ed, you had something?
No, it was not.
Oh.
No. It was just, if we're, the comment about check the FDA list about what drugs have been recalled. Well, let's not take any drugs. I mean, then I'm not going to be prescribed anything. I'm going to go get leeches. To some extent, I'm being flippant of it.
No,
but
yeah.
I often, but it's to some extent that there's a level of risk to which you will always take. And I guess that's the personal choice thing. But I'm not going to be scared of taking something that has been in production, not for this particular virus, but for the type of vaccine since the 70s. So.
Well, and you guys can exchange numbers and conversation. You know, and that's what's so interesting about these kind of conversations, is that people feel very strongly on both sides of it, and it just is what it is. Yep.
So, me personally, I don't like being forced to do anything, but if my mom said, Grace, you're gonna get the vaccine, it's gonna help you, sure, okay. I'm fine with that. I'm a kid, she can choose for me. I know she probably wouldn't want to do that, but if my parents said, Grace, you're gonna get the vaccine, I'm okay with that. But also about the science about this, science has a lot of holes and it's not always correct. Like, science isn't gonna explain everything, and it hasn't. So we can't always just trust science. For something this big, people have died, but then again, the vaccine has helped a lot of people too.
Yeah, it's definitely all a gamble. We have one question in the back, and then we're going to wrap this part up.
So my standpoint as a Black woman, so in history class, at least for me going to a predominantly Black school, we hear stories about Henrietta Lacks,
Yes.
the Tuskegee syphilis experiment.
Yes, I was going to touch on that, but thank you.
As somebody who is Black in America, hearing those stories, mandates are extremely tricky. I am very much pro-vaccine and hope that everyone does get it, but I also understand from that standpoint why it's tricky, because there have been situations in which Black people have been forced to do something and it has been completely for, like, not for their well-being.
Yeah.
That being said, in this particular situation, it's kind of a thing on which we have to consider what is best for the common good of everybody. I hear a lot of people always say, well, there's a 98.9% survival rate and it's not worth it. Well, 98.9% of the population versus 1%. 1% of the world population is 78 million people. So I feel like in one sense, it's good to kind of still give everybody their civil liberties, to not force something on them, but we have to also consider there's still a lot at stake. A 1% of the population is still enough people to do damage, and there's already been enough people who have passed away to do damage. We're in a labor shortage right now, and it's not necessarily because people don't want to go back to work, it's because there is a lot of people who have passed away. So it's one of those tricky things in which I get kind of what they're doing. It's almost like a scare tactic, like, oh, we're gonna make everybody get the vaccine, because in my opinion, I feel like it's more of a, well, maybe if we scare them into, we're gonna force it on them, maybe they'll all kind of wanna take it into their own accord and get it. And I feel like because this whole entire world has been flipped upside down over the past 2 years, everyone is out of their minds and crazy, because everybody's scared. Even the people who don't actually take it seriously, they're scared. Because there's so much uncertain. We don't know if we're gonna go close down again. We don't know if we're gonna hear somebody passed away. So it's a slippery slope, but I can kind of understand why it's kind of heading towards where it is because of how much is at stake. But ultimately, I don't think a mandate is going to be the best decision based on the history of America and based on even decisions like Texas with women's reproductive rights. Because if we allow them to mandate us to get a vaccine, well then everything that people are trying to do now to protect women's reproductive rights, they could go ahead at a drop of a dime and say, well, you let us tell you to get the vaccine, so why can't we tell you what you can do with your uterus or not?
Well, and that's the thing that's my only thought process on this is, I have found this interesting in the last 2 years with people having very strong opinions about a lot of things in the last 2 years, is that people kind of pick which ones, work for them because it works for them, right? So for me, it's like, okay, if they can mandate this and you'll be up, good for, okay with them mandating this, then if they mandate this on this end, then you're not okay with it because you don't agree with it. So that's the part where I feel like people need to really be honest with themselves and say, okay, do we like the mandating part of it, or do we like the fact that I feel safer because they're doing this? You get what I'm saying? That's the question for me, is that we pick what works for us. And if we like it, then it's good. But if we don't quite like it, then it's not good. It doesn't work like that. It's got to go across the board. So that's my thought process on it when we start talking about mandating something. Because for a lot of people that are in agreement with mandating, it's because they want it to happen because they don't want to die, essentially. That's really what it boils down to. Is people don't want to be sick, they don't want to die, they want to be protected. So they want everybody else to take that into consideration as well, which I have no problem with that. But what part of that, if it goes to something else, will you still be okay with mandating? That's my question on it. So.
I had a two-part comments real quick. First of all, I think a great deal of the country and the world were like in fear There were people who overcame their fear to still go out and do, services and, provide the goods that the people needed during the time. The same fear that kept people home, a lot of people that went out and worked dealt with that same fear. But they overcame this, so everybody here and the people making the laws could have somewhat of a normal life. And to turn around and then put a mandate on, okay, now we got the shot, take it or get out. And you were in the trenches the whole time.
Oh, you're talking about like the nurses,
Right.
different,
It's disgraceful.
essential workers.
And it's disgraceful. And secondly, the people who are at risk for this COVID have always been at risk for a great deal of things. There's been no talk on, safeguarding or building your immunity, no talk on nutrition. They tell you, diabetes, high blood pressure, all of this. This is stuff where you're at risk. You can catch a cold down tomorrow, but nobody's addressing this. Going back to, when I was a kid, we used to have the nutrition thing. It was taught in schools. It was on commercials. They talked about the foods that were good, everything else. There's no talk about that. Everybody want to live a kind of crazy life and just get a quick fix. But for those of us who try to live holistic lives and don't deal with it and haven't had a cold in 10 years and all that stuff, I don't want certain things to be implanted into my system. I should have the right to be able to say, hey, I'll deal with whatever comes with it. If you're afraid the shot is there, get the shot. I respect that. Just respect the fact that the people who don't want to get it. And again, for people to stand out here when you were in fear, it's a doctor here, it's a nurse there, it's a guy handing you a grocery, turn around and say, okay, get up out of here. If you don't get the shot, it's disgraceful.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I have, woo, we tackled some good topics today, didn't we? I feel as though we did. I know it's late, it's 9 o'clock almost, so I don't want to keep you guys, even though I would love to sit here and talk all night, because I really do enjoy this. I really enjoy understanding people's whys and understanding like how they kind of got to where they are and their thinking. And I also enjoy different perspectives because we need that, because that's the only way for us to actually grow is to hear people that don't echo what we feel. So I really appreciate everybody being honest up here and transparent. And also, I really do appreciate everybody being respectful of the fact that everybody was honest and transparent. So I really do. Does anybody have anything they want to close with real quick?
The score of the Braves and the Astros.
Let me look it up, though.
He's got it on his phone.
Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, thank you, Jimmy. I appreciate you. Anybody else?
Thank you all for being here and listening
Yeah.
and talking.
Yes, I appreciate the audience members too for sharing your perspectives for sure.
Well, I've done several of these with Aaron now, and every one of them has been enjoyable, and the dialogue is always fantastic, and I appreciate the opportunity to express my views and hear other views and help everybody hopefully understand each other better.
I guess I just want to leave with one thing. I don't want to start another argument, so please don't respond.
You got at least 2 lawyers up here.
As a culmination of things, how much time do you give someone to, say, accept marriage equality, accept gay marriage, accept interracial marriage, accept the black people just being black and living? I know that there is a huge generation gap between all of us, but that gap needs to be closed, and the slower it's closed, the more people are getting infected, the more people are dying. And you can't give someone forever. You can't give someone 20 years to accept things like that. It has to be done as soon as possible.
Thank you, Gary.
Need a vaccine for it.
Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate that. Anybody else? Mike, you have anything?
No.
Oh, awesome.
He'll write about it.
Right. No, again, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you all for being. I see some people that were here at the first one. Thank you so much for coming back to the second one. Again, I appreciate my panel here for you all being so transparent and just so gracious to each other. That's what makes it successful, is that you guys really do honor that. So I do appreciate that. And again, to our audience member, everybody that helped with our sound, visuals, and makeup and everything else. Our event manager, I created that So no, and Natalie, thank you for helping with the mic and cleaning it up after everyone, so everybody feels safe. So thank you guys so much. It's been a great evening. I appreciate you all dearly. Thank you.